Zohran Mamdani was on Chris Hayes, friend of the show, two friends of the show, talking to one another, chopping it up.
Today, multiple outlets are reporting that Donald Trump is attempting to tip the scales of New York City's mayoral election by offering some of the candidates jobs in the administration in order to help Andrew Cuomo defeat Zohran Mamdani. Ever since the 33-year-old Mamdani won the Democratic primary in June, the Fox News viewer, who is our president, has been taking a special interest in the New York City race.
If a communist gets elected to run New York, it can never be the same, but we have tremendous power at the White House to run places when we have to. You have a lot of crooked things going on in New York. We're going to straighten out New York. Maybe we're going to have to straighten it out from Washington.
Respond to all this news on a very busy day is the Democratic candidate for New York City Mayor, Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So what do you think about all this?
I think it's outrageous. And I think oftentimes in a race such as this, it's tempting to think of this solely in the question of how does this impact the race? But this is an affront to our city's democracy. This is an affront to the values that make so many of us proud to be Americans, that we could choose our own leaders, not that our leaders pick themselves or their friends. And we're seeing in this time when Donald Trump has taken snap from hungry New Yorkers, has passed legislation that would throw millions of New Yorkers off their health insurance, that we have Democrats in Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams working with this administration to try and subvert the will of Democratic primary voters right here in New York City.
Yeah. Advisor President Trump have discussed the possibility of giving Mayor Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa positions in the admin to clear the field and damage the chances of Zohran Mamdani. Worth considering what the point of this is. If Mamdani winning would be such an asset for the right, why are they trying to get him to lose? A sincere concern for the well-being of New York? A genuine fear that Mamdani will topple capitalism in the city? Do these seem plausible? Why are they so worried? Why are the Democrats so worried about Mamdani winning? If the Republicans are this worried about Mamdani winning, why the fuck are the Democrats so worried about it? Why are the Republicans so scared? Now, Osito is joking when he says, is this a sincere concern for the well-being of New York or a genuine fear that Mamdani will topple capitalism in the city? No, it's because if you give socialists an ounce of control and power, it will unfortunately spark a light under the asses of every American that will look to this and go, wait a minute, there is actually an alternative. There are people who call themselves socialists who happen to be in favor of like real modest social democratic reforms and will fight for it tooth and nail. Why doesn't my local politician do that? That's what the Democrats are afraid of. Well, some are not. Some actually do think that this is good for the party, but others are genuinely afraid of that. Republicans, on the other hand, are afraid that if this kind of populist momentum actually happens within the base of the Democratic Party, that then causes the Democrats to reflect on and by force change the trajectory of the party's policy platform, then all of a sudden Republicans are in big trouble because now they actually have to fucking get way more creative. They actually have to legislate. They actually have to concede on some of the the real anti-capitalist policies that might be getting implemented. That's it. Because as I've said over and over again, if Democrats were actual fighters, if they were the real left flank, if they were really on board with even like social democratic reforms, the Republicans would have to advocate against those reforms because they can't have that. They are beholden to their corporate benefactors. They're the right flank. But in the absence of any sort of initiative from the Democrats, Donald Trump can run around and fucking say stuff like, I'm the real working class hero. I'm the real hero of the working class. I'm going to save the American working class. Well, you could only get away with saying that because the Democrats don't try to become the heroes of the working class. They don't actually push for anything that helps the working class. They're just marginally better than the Republicans. They're dire Republicans.
Is there a Democratic argument that there's some problem with this split field of four candidates that ends up with a person being the mayor of the city with 40% of the vote? Like, is there, because we have, we had the ranked choice voting in the primary, which I think is an important thing. You've now got this very weird situation where the next mayor might win 35, 40% of the vote. And there's a question about what that would mean for that mayor's representative ability in the city.
I don't think any of those questions are motivating Donald Trump.
That's fair.
Thinking about the actions that they take. and I think that
I don't think they're afraid. They love using socialism and Mamdani's the perfect thing to attack. If that was the case, they would literally celebrate Mamdani winning. Do you not understand? If Republicans truly thought Mamdani would be a spectacular failure for the Democratic Party, then what better opportunity than to let the fucking Democrats fail on their own so they can constantly present Mamdani as the failure, the celebrated National Democratic Party figure. How do you not see this? The thing that these people fear most is change. The thing that Democrats fear most is having to actually do their jobs, having their constituents actually wake up to the reality that there could be better candidates out there. That's how Donald Trump won. Hillary Clinton did this with Donald Trump. They propped Trump up. And look what happened to the party. Now imagine if there was a Trump-style left populist momentum in the left flank of the Democratic Party. All of a sudden, the Democrats actually reflected the values that they are supposed to champion. They do push for those policies all of a sudden. What happens then? Even more myopic, if Mamdani and left progressive Working Families Party DSA types become a viable option, Republicans lose their lane in blue state duopolies to centrist Dems. Not only that, but that would also mean one of the most populous and blue cities in America would turn red because of how badly Mamdani would fail, further solidifying the right's hold on America. Literally makes no sense. Exactly. If they truly thought Mamdani would be a spectacular failure, they would let him win the race. They would let him win the race so they can always point back to Mamdani's failure as a clear-cut, obvious indication that socialism is destined for failure. Now, this doesn't end with Mamdani's victory. There's a lot more work that must be done because even after he wins, inshallah, there is still going to be a lot of hurdles thrown in his direction. People are trying to constantly fuck him for the same exact reasons that I just mentioned, because those motivations don't go away once he magically wins and becomes the Democratic mayor of New York who happens to be a socialist.
If this was just a question of am I going to face 3 candidates or 1 candidate, I wouldn't have concerns. I'm just as confident of beating Andrew Cuomo today as I was yesterday. My concern, however, is what these so-called leaders are willing to give up in the name of securing power. That is why so many New Yorkers are turned off by our politics, because they see no relevance of their struggles in the conversations that are taking place.
You know, there's reporting over the summer that there was a phone call between Donald Trump and Andrew Cuomo, previously undisclosed, reported by the Times August 6th, that Trump spoke about the race directly with Cuomo, an old associate and foil, according to 3 people briefed on the call who were not authorized to discuss it. Andrew Cuomo denies that they talked about the race. I mean, is your read on this situation that
if it's Zohran, Sliwa, and Cuomo in the race, will he still win? Yes. I mean, look, I don't want to say that it's a given. It's a 100% certainty. Nothing is. But, I mean, he's looking pretty good right now.
Trump is pulling for Cuomo?
Absolutely. And I think Trump is making that very clear, that this is his choice for mayor of New York City. It's Andrew Cuomo. And he's willing to use every single tool and tactic at his disposal to try and assist Andrew Cuomo in that same pursuit. And what we're seeing right now is to offer and consider positions for 2 candidates in this race to try and make this one-on-one. It shows just how threatened he is by what our administration would be, which is a fulfillment of the thing that he ran on but has since betrayed, which is a promise of a more affordable life for Americans.
You know, for people that are watching this that consider themselves, you know, Democrats are sort of in the big tent, right? And say they're in the big anti-Trump coalition, okay? And, you know, they've known Andrew Cuomo as a known quantity for a long time. And there's a feeling right now as they watch sort of Governor Pritzker in Illinois and Governor Newsom and, you know, mayors in Chicago and D.C. and Baltimore deal with this sort of Godzilla-like figure, right, who's sort of wreaking havoc all over the places, that we need someone who's strong, who's experienced, who can go toe-to-toe, who maybe is kind of a tough guy. And this Zohran Mamdani seems like a nice guy. You know, he seems charming. He's 33 years old. Like,
why is Trump backing Cuomo instead of Sliwa? Election viability. If they get Sliwa out, who is the designated Republican on the Republican ticket, then he can push all the Republicans to vote for Cuomo. That's his only shot at, like, possibly ensuring that Zohran doesn't win. Sliwa is not going to win, obviously. He never has. But Andrew Cuomo at least is, like, has enough name recognition from, like, people that have voted in New York that he could potentially put together like a coalition of Republican voters and like Andrew Cuomo knowers to maybe ensure that Zohran doesn't win. Having said that, still very difficult.